If an FBI agent sees someone committing a federal crime, that FBI agent is not allowed to intervene in any way. Not allowed to flash a badge and make an arrest. That FBI agent is not allowed to investigate the crime being committed right before his eyes in Donald Trump's America, as long as the crime is being committed by the mayor of New York City. Since Monday, on what was the 21st day of the Trump political weaponization of the Justice Department, the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, has known that the FBI is no longer allowed to investigate anything he does anywhere at any time. Just think about that. No one in American history, including past presidents, has ever had the benefit of the FBI being banned in writing from investigating that person. No one. So if this is one of those typical nights on the town for the self-styled New York nightlife celebrity Eric Adams, he will be at one of the city's most exclusive and expensive nightclubs until at least 2 a.m. That's standard for him. There have been more than twice as many mayors of New York than presidents of the United States, because the city of New York is much older than the United States of America. In 360 years of New York mayors, beginning in 1665, none of them have enjoyed the nightlife more than Eric Adams, including the most corrupt New York City mayors like the notorious Jimmy Walker, who fled the city to avoid federal prosecution in 1932. Tonight may be an especially late night for the mayor because he has more to celebrate than he ever has before. Donald Trump's Justice Department put an order in writing on Monday saying there shall be no further targeting of Mayor Adams or additional investigative steps. No one in the Justice Department is allowed to investigate the mayor of New York City as of Monday. And the mayor of New York, who's already under federal indictment for crimes including bribery, has known since Monday that he can violate any federal law he wants now, and there will not be an investigation, cannot be an investigation. That order is in full force tonight and has been in full force all week. But another order issued in the same Justice Department memo on Monday has been defied by the prosecutor who received that order. That order from the Justice Department said, you are directed as authorized by the Attorney General to dismiss the pending charges in United States versus Adams. That memo was sent from the acting Deputy Attorney General to the acting U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York in Manhattan. The sender and the receiver of that memo personify what the Attorney General of the United States, Robert Jackson, meant when he said this in 1940. The prosecutor at his best is one of the most beneficent forces in our society. When he acts from malice or other base motives, he is one of the worst. That memo was sent by one of the worst to one of the best. The acting Deputy Attorney General is Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer, Emile Beauvais. I sat behind Emile Beauvais for weeks when he was the number 2 defense counsel for Donald Trump in the criminal case where a Manhattan jury found Donald Trump guilty of 34 counts of business fraud. There is no reason to equate a criminal defense lawyer with the criminal defendant the lawyer represents. The criminal defense lawyer is one of the noble callings under the American system of justice. There was nothing in Emile Beauvais' representation of Donald Trump in that courtroom that gave me the slightest reason to disrespect his work in that room as a criminal defense lawyer. In fact, I thought Emile Beauvais did a better job in that courtroom than the lead defense counsel, Todd Blanche, who Donald Trump has nominated for a position in the Justice Department that requires Senate confirmation. Emile Beauvais previously served as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, where he was, we discovered this week, an enthusiastic supporter of the investigations and prosecutions of the January 6th attackers at the Capitol. Now that he is working in Donald Trump's Justice Department, he has made it his personal mission to search out, find, and attempt to fire any FBI agent or federal prosecutor who worked on any of the January 6th prosecutions, which he personally, enthusiastically supported inside the Justice Department before he left the department in 2022. Today, the acting U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York, 38-year-old Danielle Sassoon, resigned after refusing to ask the judge to dismiss the criminal case against Mayor Adams. And so the principled resignation is back. There is nothing quite like the principled resignation in American politics. They have been rare because periods of crisis in government have been rare. Most of the 20th century sailed by without a principled resignation of note until what the headline writers called the Saturday Night Massacre in 1973, when Republican President Richard Nixon ordered his Republican Attorney General, Elliot Richardson, to fire his friend, the Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox, who was investigating Richard Nixon. Attorney General Richardson resigned instead of firing Archibald Cox, and then the Deputy Attorney General resigned instead of carrying out the president's order. And then President Nixon found Solicitor General Robert Bork willing to do that firing. But the whole scheme didn't work. A new special prosecutor was appointed, and Richard Nixon was driven out of office, and the honorable people who resigned or were fired in that so-called Saturday Night Massacre lived the rest of their lives in public honor because of that moment. Archibald Cox was revered for the rest of his life in legal circles because of that attempt that Richard Nixon made to fire him, which eventually succeeded. The surge of confidence in the American judicial system and prosecutorial system was something that you really had to live through then to even begin to comprehend or feel. Kids who were in high school would live the rest of the 20th century with the full confidence that no one is above the law, the full confidence that the principled resignation is more powerful than a corrupt president. There have been some relatively minor and little noticed principled resignations at other times. Two Assistant Secretaries of Health and Human Services, Mary Jo Bain and Peter Edelman, resigned in 1996 over President Clinton's embrace of a Republican welfare bill that President Clinton signed into law. Those resignations had no effect, which in a way made them even more noble, possibly. The effect of a principled resignation is not the point. We have seen the principled resignation become one of the cracks in the wall that took down a president, but those resignations would still be important even if they didn't drive President Nixon from office, because the point of the principled resignation is the principle. Yesterday, Danielle Sassoon sent an 8-page letter to the Attorney General, Pamela Jo Bondi, asking for a meeting with her. It was a letter from the lead prosecutor in the criminal case against the mayor of New York, asking the Attorney General to have a meeting about the case after Emil Bovey ordered Danielle Sassoon to have the case dismissed. Danielle Sassoon knew how her letter would be received by the Attorney General. She knew that her letter was filled with brave defiance, principled defiance of Emil Bovey and Donald Trump's desires. And so the last line of Danielle Sassoon's letter to the Attorney General says, in the event you are unwilling to meet or to reconsider the directive in light of the problems raised by Mr. Bovey's memo, I am prepared to offer my resignation. It has been and continues to be my honor to serve as a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. It turns out Danielle Sassoon's last act as the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York was to write an 8-page indictment of Emil Bovey. Her letter says, quote, the evidence against Adams proves beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed federal crimes, and that to ask a judge to dismiss the case would be, quote, inconsistent with my ability and duty to prosecute federal crimes without fear or favor and to advance good faith arguments before the courts. In other words, she couldn't go into a courtroom and lie to a judge in order to get the case dismissed against the mayor of New York. Because in her view, that's exactly what Emil Bovey was asking her to do, ordering her to do, knowing that Attorney General Bondi was unlikely to know anything about her. Danielle Sassoon flashed her conservative credentials in the letter, noting that she served as a clerk for Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, who was then the most conservative member of the Supreme Court. She didn't mention the Wall Street Journal op-ed piece that she wrote at the end of her first week as the U.S. Attorney on February 2nd, 2025, sharply criticizing President Biden's commutation of the sentences of almost 2,500 nonviolent offenders. She didn't mention that she's a member of the Federalist Society, a magna cum laude graduate of Harvard College and Yale Law School. She noted the two reasons Emil Bove gave for dismissing the case against Eric Adams, and she said, "I cannot advance either argument in good faith." Mr. Bove proposes dismissing the charges against Adams in return for his assistance in enforcing the federal immigration laws, analogizing to the prisoner exchange in which the United States freed notorious Russian arms dealer Victor Bout in return for an American prisoner in Russia. She quotes the Justice Department manual saying, "The legal judgments of the Department of Justice must be impartial and insulated from political influence." She quoted Attorney General Bundy's memo to Justice Department employees saying they must not allow political influence in their decision-making, saying, "In your words, the Department of Justice will not tolerate abuses of the criminal justice process, coercive behavior, or other forms of misconduct. Dismissal of the indictment for no other reason than to influence Adams's mayoral decision-making would be all three." Although Mr. Bove disclaimed any intention to exchange leniency in the case for Adams' assistance in enforcing federal law, that is the nature of the bargain laid bare in Mr. Bove's memo. That is especially so given Mr. Bove's comparison to the Bout prisoner exchange, which was quite expressly a quid pro quo, but one carried out by the White House, not by the prosecutors in charge of Bout's case. I attended a meeting on January 31st, 2025 with Mr. Bove, Adams's counsel, and members of my office. Adams's attorneys repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo, indicating that Adams would be in a position to insist with the department's enforcement priorities only if the indictment were dismissed. Mr. Bove admonished a member of my team who took notes during that meeting and directed the collection of those notes at the meeting's conclusion. Taking notes in meetings is what lawyers do. They take notes during phone calls. They take notes all the time. You want your lawyer taking notes all the time. Why did Emil Bove fear those notes? In his reply to Danielle Sassoon today, Emil Bove claimed that he seized those notes because he's afraid of leaks. In that case, no Trump lawyer in the Justice Department can ever be taking notes, according to the Emil Bove rules on notes. Danielle Sassoon revealed that there was more to come in the case against Eric Adams. We have proposed a superseding indictment that would add an obstruction conspiracy count based on evidence that Adams destroyed and instructed others to destroy evidence and provide false information to the FBI. And that would add further factual allegations regarding his participation in a fraudulent straw donor scheme. Danielle Sassoon reminded the Attorney General that it is not up to the prosecutors to dismiss a case that is already in court. Only a judge can do that. Danielle Sassoon warned the Attorney General, the assigned district judge, the Honorable Dale E. Ho, appears likely to conduct a searching inquiry in this case. That means it is very possible that a searching inquiry will involve the judge forcing Emil Bove into the courtroom to try to defend his order to dismiss the case on political grounds, purely political grounds. Danielle Sassoon wrote, "I remain baffled by the rushed and superficial process by which this decision was reached in seeming collaboration with Adams' counsel without my direct input on the ultimate stated rationales for dismissal." In his response to her letter, Emil Bove put all the assistant U.S. attorneys who worked on the Adams case on administrative leave, quote, pending investigations by the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of Professional Responsibility, both of which will also evaluate your conduct. The Adams case was ordered transferred to the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. by Emil Bove, where it would have been assigned to the Public Integrity Section, and the two attorneys leading that section, John Keller and Kevin Driscoll, then promptly resigned today. The New York Times reports several hours later, 3 other lawyers in the unit also resigned, according to people familiar with the developments. So that's a total of 6 in one day. The principled resignations in the Justice Department tonight include 6 principled lawyers: Danielle Sassoon, John Keller, Kevin Driscoll, and 3 others. They follow the principled resignations of David Lebrick, who was the acting Assistant Secretary of the Treasury in the department assigned to payments, who resigned when Elon Musk seized control of the United States Treasury. And there is one firing that should be counted in effect in the principled resignation column, and that is the Inspector General of the United States Agency for International Development, Paul Martin, who wrote a critical report on Monday of what Elon Musk is doing to USAID, whereupon he was promptly fired the next day. The principled resignation is now upon us.